Okay, Chapter 2 is System Threats and Risks, and that's where the things that are kind of destructive, not kind of destructive, that are destructive for us that we get when we get infected, kind of go there. So describe the types of software-based attacks and hardware-based attacks. A lot of them can be either. The keystroke logger can either be a hardware device or a software device. I think that there is a lab at the end of the chapter that you can download a keystroke logger if you want. My experiences with keystroke loggers is that if you have an antivirus software, it picks up on them pretty quickly. So a lot of this stuff really needs to be hidden or disguised in some way so that the antivirus software won't catch it. Although not everybody uses antivirus software. The virus that I was telling you about that I want you to do for the activity, had a student probably, I don't know, 18 months ago, took it home to do the lab. That's a lot of fun. Put it on her cousin's laptop, which didn't have an antivirus software on it, and then took control of the machine on Halloween. That was a lot of fun, too. As the 14-year-old ran screaming out of the room. But things happen, you know, if the browser just like pops up, you know, starts for no good reason, you may want to start looking at what's going on. One of my favorites is that your network may be infected, is people are complaining about your wireless access point, and you don't have one. Your network may be infected. There's lots of things, and a lot of security, just kind of paying attention to what's going on. What's going on with the machine? What's changed? Is it your desktop, or are your servers running abnormally? Processor utilization. Yes.
What will make you just be sitting there and all of a sudden your disk drive opens up?
Your disk drive opens up, or you may be infected. You may be infected. That's one of the things that you can do with this particular piece of software. There are a number of items, and I'd like for you to investigate them. The one that I particularly would like for you to investigate, a lot of them are just kind of gadgets. They'll flip the screen and open web browsers, chat with the victim. There's a chat with this. You can actually chat with the victim with this software. But the keystroke logger demonstrates a larger universe. Each of them does a larger universe of tools that can be used against you. Keystroke loggers are particularly troublesome because they're very small, really easy to install, and guess who gets, it's always a question I love to ask, who gets absolute access to the whole building when nobody's around? Network administrator, and we kind of trust the network administrator. What about the people who clean the building?
They get no access.
Huh?
They get no access.
Oh, they get total access. They get into every room in the building except maybe the knock. I'm not talking about network access. I'm talking about physical access because we're kind of talking about keystroke loggers here. So how are you going to get a keystroke logger on? You're going to slip the cleaning crew at 20 and say, hey, put this thing on the CEO's computer. And how often do you look at the back of your computer?
Not very often.
Not very often.
Especially as one of built-ins.
One of those built-ins and all that stuff, and they'll do that, and then you just get all this stuff. Well, the keystroke loggers are pretty sophisticated. They record their flash. They record all the keystrokes. And they're even smart enough to email you the keystrokes. So you get usernames, passwords, what people are doing, documents that you're writing, those kinds of things. A pretty good little spy tool. So that's why I really want you to kind of pay especially close attention to the keystroke logger. Yeah. After you get done, say, okay, big deal. What does it do? All it does is record every keystroke on the other keyboard. So they can be particularly bad. Define virtualization, explain how attackers are targeting virtual systems. We'll talk about that a little bit. I don't hopefully have to define virtualization for you since that's what you're using. Virtualization has some vulnerabilities. Many of them have been fixed. There are different layers, different manufacturers, different vendors of virtualization. VirtualBox, is that what you're using? VirtualBox, VMware, Microsoft are, I think, probably the big three. Well, say that. Now, having said that, Linux also has a virtualization server too. So there are lots of those around. Software-based attack, malicious software or malware, maliciousware. Then here's a computer system without the owner's knowledge or consent. Somebody sends you a document, you double click on it, it installs something. Microsoft is really a willing, unwilling, whatever, unwitting participant or a participant of sorts in this, because the default configuration of Windows is to not show file extensions. So if I made a file that was, like cia.pptx.exe, what would you see? You would see cia.pptx. You wouldn't see the .exe extension, which is going to be an executable that's now going to install my malware. Maybe it's going to install my virus on there so that I can own your computer. Little things like that, little configuration things that you can do to your machines to see what's going on. Is that a big change to turn on the file extensions? No, you just got to go do it. You should be able to do it with a policy to do a lot of machines, or you should be able to do it individually to your own machine. So malware is something that just refers to damaging or annoying software. And some of it is just annoying, just pops up messages, and they've got some examples in the book, I think, that's kind of like political messages. Those are the ones that I really love, when the politicians send me something. But they just pop up something that has a message of some sort. Primary objectives: infect, conceal, or bring profit from the actions that it performs. So we want to infect the computer system. Why do people infect computer systems? What do they get out of it? Information? It may be. Some of them do it just ego. That's a big thing. I mean, it's the same way. Why do hackers hack? I think that goes back to the Chapter 1 stuff, doesn't it? We have some now. The denial of service guys are hacktivists. They actually have a mission. They believe in something. And then the ego is actually one of the things. The spy wants to steal something in particular. Is a spy going to attack my computer? Probably not. Is a spy going to attack the computer of a CEO of a company? Yeah, you're getting into a whole lot of different things. Maybe a chief financial officer or an operating officer, something like that. You had to really pay attention. And these guys are, of course, absolutely literate in the world of what can happen and what to do and not to do and what to click on and not click on, right? No. How are you going to protect them? One of the best ways in the Windows world, and this is a continuing theme of mine, is to not be an administrator. Windows 7 helps out a lot because by default the administrator account is disabled. You have the user that's an administrator, but it asks you if you want to do something. If an action is going on that would actually change the operating system. When it asks you if you want to do something and you haven't done anything, say no. A lot of people become, and you heard this one from me before, clickies. Just click yes. Just click yes. Okay, you can get in a lot of trouble just clicking yes. The reason these things pop up and say there's something wrong is because there's something wrong. The reason they pop up and ask, do you want to do this, is because you're about to make changes to your system. If you didn't do it, then you probably want to say no. It's okay to say no occasionally to these things. Especially, and I've told you the story, I'm sure, about the student, and this was probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, who was in a Windows Server class, and the lab said, after you create another administrative user, disable the account administrator. Well, she read, disable the account administrator, and did. Well, you get this message that I'm going to take some liberties with. It basically says, you're about to do something really stupid. Are you sure you want to do it? Yes. So now you have a computer that has no administrator. You can't do anything without an administrator of some kind. What the message actually said is, you're about to disable the account of an administrator, and there are no other administrative users on this system. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. Read those things. Read those things. Huh?
What would you have to do in a case like that?
In a case like that, first you do some research, and then you find out that if you boot into safe mode, and you know and not only that, and then after she did that, she gave us the wrong password that she had put in for administrator. And you know the password for the administrator, the policies actually aren't enforced in safe mode, so you could get into it in safe mode and enable the account. Other than that, you boot with your CD, DVD, and reinstall.
I did that 3 times, my 8th time shit.
And reinstall. Well, locked yourself out? Why'd you do that?
He was asking me to do something else, and like you said, I was...
Yeah. Clicky, click, click. Oh, yeah.
I went to go...
There are reasons these things pop up, and it's not always because of the unknown error. That's the one that I love, is Windows knows about all these errors except the unknown error, right? Infecting the different types of malware. Viruses are the one that we hear about the most, and the antivirus software is named after. Viruses are attached to another document. A virus needs some help. A virus needs our help. Viruses don't just show up and spread themselves. Worms do. They'll be here in just a minute. But viruses, we have to actually activate. It's just like this one that I'm giving you to play with, look at what goes on. You've got to actually run the executable before anything happens. If you don't run the executable, nothing happens. Once a virus infects the computer, it performs 2 separate tasks. It replicates itself by spreading to other computers, activates a malicious payload, whatever it's going to do. A lot of these things hopefully won't spread. That's one of the reasons to maybe run an antivirus software on all of your machines. Maybe run a firewall on your internal network. Antivirus software certainly, but do you run the firewall? We don't in this building. We don't run the firewalls on these machines. They're disabled because it makes it easier for us to do maintenance remotely. But this is one of the reasons, one of the considerations of, do you want to have firewalls on your internal network? You're protected from the outside world by the outside firewall. But what protects the individual machines from all of us other up-and-coming bad guys, white hats? What protects the machines from these self-replicating diseases? Antivirus software. Antivirus softwares are good. Are they 100%? Well, different antivirus softwares detect different things because the definitions may be a little bit different. And what they're looking at is actually patterns in the files themselves to see if they match the definition that they've given. That is in, when you look at these things, you have definitions up to a certain point. The definitions are just character strings, then it's looking for matches of those character strings. So these malware, these antiviruses, problems ranging from display an annoying message to erasing files on a hard drive, causing the computer to crash repeatedly. Anybody ever gotten one? I've had viruses. They're kind of interesting to get on your virtual machines, if nothing else. And this is one of the reasons to maybe to use virtualization, to use virtual machines when you're on the internet. Because particularly if you will enable the undo disk, just for surfing the internet, it's a great thing. If it gets infected, just delete the machine. Start with a new one. The undo disks that I'm talking about, because as you update these things, when you put a new one, I probably don't have to go through all the updating again. Undo disks allow you to make changes without actually committing them to the virtual system until you're sure they work. If they don't work, you simply erase the undo disk and you go back to where you started from. So those things. And the thing that I'm giving you has some of these different ones. I think that probably keystroke logger could be particularly devastating. Somebody gets all of your usernames, passwords, the merger document that the CEOs type in, or that somebody's typing that the CEO's reviewing, or emails that may be going on at high levels. All of that can be captured with a keystroke logger. Somebody does something to flip your video, that's particularly annoying, but it's not anything that's going to be devastating. Somebody opens a web browser on your computer, yes, that's annoying, but it's not particularly devastating. What information can you or can't you get? If somebody erases, deletes all the files on the hard drive, that's kind of a pain. Not that they're unrecoverable, it's just kind of a pain. It just takes more effort to do that. There are a number of softwares that will allow you to recover deleted files. This is the infecting malware. Important, please read. This is the kind of the pop-up kind of annoying message, and this one's in the book. It says, I think I speak for every pot smoker in North America when I say it's time to legalize marijuana, and on and on and on, some political message, whatever that they want. And in the case of the WikiLeaks or Anonymous, it might be a support, the WikiLeaks support, what we have in freedom of information. If you believe that freedom of information means the ability to display stolen material, you got to get into, I mean, I know, yeah, that sounds good, but let's look at the whole picture. Is or isn't? I don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer. Was it legally obtained? We don't know that yet because they've got a soldier arrested that's going to be court-martialed. He hasn't been convicted. But I'm seriously doubting that the Secretary of State said, here, go publish this stuff. I don't know. Types of computer viruses: file infector, resident virus, boot virus, companion virus, macro virus, and they go through each of these things. Boot virus, something that's particularly annoying because it infects your boot sector. Can you rewrite your boot sector? Sure. And each of the Windows variants is a little bit different, so we won't go into the F-disk or whether you go into boot to the CD, what you want to do with these things. Companion viruses, macro viruses are kind of a pain. Metamorphic viruses are really difficult to do anything with. You've got metamorphic and polymorphic. What these are viruses that change themselves from one form to the other, that which makes them particularly difficult to discover and destroy. Kind of like, and I think, is this the one that they talk about, AIDS? And they said that the AIDS virus is, it is a virus, isn't it? Is much like computer viruses. And they're using some of the same algorithms, some of the same software to try to find solutions to both. A worm is different from a virus. A virus needs our help. A worm doesn't. A worm is designed to take advantage of a vulnerability in an application or operating system in order to enter the system from viruses in that they can travel by themselves. But let's go back up here. Take advantage of a vulnerability. What's a vulnerability? We had softwares, and we have vulnerabilities. What's a vulnerability? Could be an unpatched system, a weakness of some kind. Just because there is a vulnerability, does that mean there's an exploit? Another new word here. What exploits do is take advantage of vulnerabilities. Just because something's open doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it as an invasion point. That's what the exploits are about. Actions the worms have performed: deleting files of the computer, allowing the computer to be remotely controlled by an attacker. And that's one of the big things I think that people want to do is if you go through the whole process. And hacking something is something that takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. It's not, and I probably said this in the first day, it's not on the movies. You know, they're sitting there and got all these lights flashing and the screens going and all that other good stuff, and they're just typing like crazy and getting into these systems. That's not the way you do it. First you set up a surveillance system. And then surveillance system. We've talked about the scans out there before and how many scans you might happen to your system in an hour, day, minute. They're looking for a vulnerability. And then you take all of these scans and you find all your vulnerabilities. Once you find the vulnerabilities, is there an exploit? There may or may not be an exploit. Sometimes they're just stupidity available. FTP. Let's put up an FTP server with an anonymous logon. Just asking for trouble. What does that mean? Anybody can get there. Then it becomes a matter of, after we get the authorization anonymous, or authentication anonymous, I got ahead of myself. What kind of authorization do we have? Do you have the ability to put files there? May or may not be the case. So worms don't actually need any help. They are self-propagating, which makes them maybe a little bit more painful. Trojan Horse, or a Trojan, is a program that's advised to be one thing and does something else. Maybe this document that I talked about earlier, a PowerPoint or a CIE.pptx.exe, which we don't see. Here is something for you to watch to get ready for the midterm. You get that from somebody. You get that from an email that has my email address as the from line. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it came from me, does it? That's part of what you guys are talking about, signatures. Is it a signed email? I took my signature off because it won't let it out of it. They were blocking it, and I'll check it again. They were blocking it going out. Worked okay internally, but I couldn't send anything. It dropped my emails. But is it a signed email? Trojan, that get this thing, say, here, use this to study for your midterm, and you install it, and all of a sudden, some of these things that we've described before happen. A Trojan, named from the Trojan horse, the mythical Trojan horse that was pulled inside the city, that we put something on our machine that's pretending to be something else, and it then infects us. Rootkits, and rootkits got a lot of publicity from Sony when they put one on your machine when you played certain of their CDs, music CDs, they said, and I'm sure it was to protect their digital rights, to prevent you from,
There's a couple of them out there trying to do that.
Yeah.
Ch2 or something?
I don't know. Sony's the one that they talk about in there. Sony's the one that I had heard about to protect their rights, and they got in a lot of trouble for it. And apparently it wasn't totally cleaned up even with the software that was distributed to take the rootkit off. And I think they've got a link in either in the chapter or at the end of the chapter where you can get from Microsoft, you can get a rootkit scanner. All these things are kind of handy to scan every once in a while just to see if anything's going on that you don't know about on your machine or on your server or on your system. Look at your own, and we'll get in, look at your own, yeah. Use the devices as we talk about them through here to scan your own network. Eventually we're going to talk about port scanners, and we'll play with a port scanner. When you're a network administrator, scan your own network every once in a while. See if some of these ports that, what the heck is that, show up. Why is that port open? Because if there is something there, it probably means that somebody's got something on one of your machines that has now poked a hole in your firewall and just sitting out there saying, hey, connect to me. And that's the re-entry point that a hacker might want to use, the remote control, remote access that they're looking for. Rootkit's goal is to hide the presence of other types of malicious software, function by replacing the operating system commands with modified commands. One of the interesting ones here to change these things, anybody, let's go back to DOS. What's the order of execution of the BATCOM-EXE? What's the order of execution? Anybody remember? It's BATCOM-EXE, isn't it? Something like that? If it's not, let's make the assumption it's .com.exe. What's the extension of Notepad? .exe. What if I make a file called notepad.com and I make it some malicious sort of thing, and you just go to the command line and type notepad? What's going to execute? First one it comes to is going to be my malicious software. And then you get this pop-up and says, Notepad's trying to open. Do you want to let it open? You're probably going to say, okay.
See what it is.
Because, yeah, I just tried to start Notepad. Did I try to start the correct Notepad? So now I have allowed this malicious software to infect me. So there are lots of, am I making you a little bit paranoid? If you're not a little bit paranoid after this class, then I haven't done my job. And a little bit paranoid is just pay attention, keep your system patched, keep your antivirus software running, and look every once in a while to see if anything really odd's going on with the machine. Every once in a while, look at what applications are running, what's running in the services. Did you just all of a sudden get something that, I don't know what the heck that is? You may want to check, and you can find all this stuff. Most of the things that are destructive are things that have been documented at one time or another. A logic bomb, a program that lies dormant until it's triggered by a specific event. One a few years ago was the Michelangelo virus that was supposed to detonate, logic bomb detonate on Michelangelo's birthday, and I don't remember which year it was. Well, how would you avoid that one? Don't start your computer that day. But you got to know what the logic is, what causes it to execute. Once triggered, the program can perform a number of malicious activities, and again, all of this depends upon getting these things onto the system. And that may be the best way to prevent all of these is just don't let them get there. How do you do that? Pay attention to what's going on. What do you click on? What do you run? Is it software? The MD5 signatures. You guys talked about MD5 earlier today in Ch2. MD5 signatures. A lot of things that you see on the internet now have these MD5 signatures with them. People say, oh, it's got an MD5 signature. It must be good. How do you know unless you run a hashing algorithm against the file that you got and compare it to the posted algorithm or the posted hash? If you do that, then you can be fairly well convinced, not totally, fairly well convinced that what you downloaded is something that hasn't been modified. And that's what a hash really is for the integrity, to be sure that something hasn't been modified. Privilege escalation, this is one of the last things typically that, near the end, that a hacker wants to do is do all the surveillance, and then we can get onto a system with any account, and then we want to escalate our privileges. After we escalate the privileges, we want to leave a backdoor so we can get back in and then delete the logs so that somebody doesn't know, the administrator, when they go to the logs, don't know what you've done to them. This table's in the book, and this is just a listing of the logic bombs and detonated, yet the employee was caught and sentenced to 8 years in prison, paid $3.1 million in restitution. And I bet it wasn't $1 down and $1 a week. That says that this employee had counted on this causing the company's stock price. This was somebody that was shorting the stock. What he was trying to do was to get some bad news out about the company, or something bad happened to the company and stock price goes down. When eBay and Amazon and those guys go down, and they do occasionally, you ever watch their stock price? Goes down. Goes down substantially. I think that I've read somewhere that, is it Amazon loses about $1 million a minute if they're offline? So that's why they have this particularly large infrastructure that you referred to earlier today, that when they were attacked by Anonymous, they just brought more resources on it. Too expensive to get shut down. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So take a look at these, and they're just different reasons that people can do that. Concealing malware, types of privilege escalation. When a user with a lower privilege uses privilege escalation to functions reserved for higher users, we get on as the user guest and we get administrative authority. That would be a privilege escalation. You log on as your user, your regular user, and you're able to elevate yourself to administrative authority, privilege escalation. And that's what users that are trying to do bad stuff to us are doing with these things. Different similar user, different restricted functions of a similar user. It's stuck. Okay. Malware for profit. How many of you click on spam? Nobody clicks on spam. That's good. Why they keep sending it? Somebody's clicking on it. They really are. It's a lucrative business, and I think that they have in there the calculation that if, like 0.1% of the users actually follow through with this, it's about, I don't know, $250,000 per attack. We talked about crashing servers. One of the issues may be to crash servers. There are other kinds of spam other than just the ones that are trying to sell you Viagra. What about the ones that say, hey, we have this really big problem, send this to everybody in your address book?
You've won $10,000.
No, not even that. The ones are, oh, Microsoft just released this patch and nobody knows about it yet, but we have this, whatever that is bad, it's going to attack, has attacked, you may be infected with. Forward this to all of your friends. What if everybody forwards this to everybody in their address book? What's going to happen to the email servers? Give full, give fast. That's a form of spam. It's also a form of denial of service, which you guys talked about. So the cost involved in spamming email addresses, equipment, and internet connection, all of these things can easily be trapped. The text-based, and they have gotten a little smarter with this stuff, right? Well, one thing, they're sending pictures. Why are they sending pictures? Anybody ever tried to see the text in a picture? It's a picture. It's a picture. Can't read it. Break it down to the pixel level, and that's pretty sophisticated for what these things are doing. It's relatively easy to scan based on the text characters. Subject lines, and that's why they have these odd subject lines, and they talk about split words here a little bit where you put a space in the middle of the word. So there are a number of things that the attackers use in order to try to get the spam past the filters. There's lots of filters out there. And some of them do a really good job. This is we got our Viagra, Valium, Xanax, Cialis, a little bit of everything here, haven't we? And then down here is the nonsense text. This nonsense text is to get it past the spam filter. They just take stuff out of books or something. Why? Is this going to be, is this going to look at something odd? Something that's going to be caught by a spam filter? Because not to a computer. Because it's not got the keywords they might have put in, like Viagra and Xanax, Valium, Cialis, might be the keywords that the filter's looking for. Well, that's not down here in this text. That's why they put it in the picture, because the picture's a picture. That's why you have configurations for your email clients to not download the pictures. Another thing that happens if you do download the pictures is, and I think I've got one that I can show you that I got one. It looks pretty good. It's from a brokerage account that I do have an account with that I'm absolutely convinced is spam, that somebody's trying to get me to click on something. And it has a little tracking number. So if I click on it, it's going to go back and say, hey, yeah, this is a live account. Now we'll keep spamming. Same thing happens on these picture downloads sometimes is they're waiting until you download the picture And when you download the picture, it says, a live account. Now we'll just keep sending you stuff. So each of these filters are for a reason. If you get this stuff and you don't want it and you know it's spam, don't download the pictures. You won't see the ad then. You'll see the gibberish or the nonsense, but also it won't then report back that your account is a live account. Other techniques, the GIF layering, word splitting, GIF layering, and they've got the picture in there and the geometric variants. They've got the picture in there where they have the picture in different parts. Word splitting is when you split a word itself, and then they have them horizontally split, where our eye will fix it, but the computer can't tell what's going on with it. And then geometric variants. So here we have Discount Pharmacy Online. We have an image here, and we have the word splitting here. We split the line at the top as they go down through these things to get, this is GIF layering. Word splitting would look something like this too, or split the word in half. GIF layering so that we get different parts of the message with different pictures. These guys go to a lot of effort, don't they? You've seen that before, sure. Of course, if you ever got spam, you've seen that before. Does anybody not get any spam at all? I mean, I get spam from myself. Yeah, some of them are pretty good at cleaning it up. Cox is reasonably good at cleaning it up, quite honestly. Yeah. And there are ways to do that. One of the ways to do that is you get an account that you have to approve every address that the email comes from. For a business account, you may want to do that. And what will usually happen is you'll send an email, at least the ones that I have sent to, you get one back that says, you're not on the list, but they'll get a message that says, so-and-so is trying to send you an email, do you want to approve this account? So that they can then put your account into the approved list, whitelisting. So we can do whitelisting, and they talk about that a little bit later. Whitelisting and blacklisting, things that you don't want or things that you do want. Security generally has, in the policy world, you can do one of two things. You can deny everything and then permit stuff, or you can permit everything and then deny the individuals. It's kind of tough to find something in the middle there. You've got to have a starting point. Usually the starting point is to allow everything or to deny everything. And this is the geometric variance. Malware for profit, the image spam can't be easily, and this is the things that we said. To detect the image spam, one approach is to examine who sent the message, what's known about the server, what did the user, where does the user go if he or she responds to the email. Look at the links before you click on them. The reason that I think that the one that I believe I sent to myself and I can show you is spam is because it comes from TD Ameritrade, and the response is email.tdameritrade.com. Go ahead. Example.
A lot of times you'll look at the URL and it looks legit, but if you actually look at it in HTML or something, it's a whole different other address, so it redirects you to another.
It redirects you, yeah. But look at the links. Some of them are not even that sophisticated.
Yeah, but I still do moderate a forum, and they'll actually put in the web address of the actual forum they're posting on, but if you look at it behind, they redirect you to
to something else, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. What's the nature of message content? How's the message technically constructed? And a lot of these things, and the reason I say this one's pretty good, a lot of these messages are in very poor English to start with, especially the guy that wants you to send you his checking account so he can give you $42 billion or whatever it is. Yeah. Spyware. Spyware is a term used to describe software that imposes upon the user's privacy or security. The Anti-Spyware Coalition defines it as deployed without the user's consent to impair the user's control over, and a big part of each of these is without the user's consent. Just because you ran something doesn't necessarily mean that you consent unless I've read and understand and I consent to this. That's why you get, for the legitimate software, you agree to the whatever the rules and regulations, the license agreement is. Use the system resource, including what programs are installed, collection, use, and distribution of personal and sensitive information. That's what a lot of people are going for. A lot of them are just going for what do you do on the internet so that they can target advertising. What?
Oh, I'm getting tired of them scanning my cookies every time that I go to a website so they can target me for ads.
Yeah.
I actually posted a rude little comment to Yahoo last night. I was like, I'm getting
Yeah.
tired of it.
Yeah. That's one of the I mean that's a reason back to the how often do you delete cookies, because that's part of what they do is they read the cookies. What is a cookie? What is a cookie? Not an Oreo.
Remember the website that you get visitors, like takes you there.
Visits. What it does is website you've been to, and what it keeps is the things that you configured on that website, isn't it? So that you don't have to fill in all the information every time you go back. It's a convenience item, but it's something that can be used against you.
Yeah, like when you go to another site and then some advertising.
Yeah. Third-party cookies.
Yeah, and then it pops up and says,
Yep.
oh, you went to Goodyear looking at tires, and then
Yep.
you're trying to sell me computer parts.
Yep.
I went to Best Buy.
Yep, exactly.
Sick of that.
All of those things. More intrusive, harder to detect, not always easy to identify. And spyware it's all over the place. A number of softwares that you can get to try to stop it and find it and get rid of it. And these are things, again, you look at this stuff, run the anti-stuff occasionally. You don't have to run it every day, every night. Some of these antiviruses in particular are pretty resource intensive. They take a huge chunk of memory in order to have the live scanning enabled. Malware for profit. We talked about ransomware a little bit, I think, on last week, right? Last Wednesday maybe, Tuesday, Monday, last Monday. Ransomware, where you get one of these things and, oh yeah, for a mere $39.95 we'll give you back your computer. Those are all things that we do to ourselves. And we just say yes. Or you go to some place that looks legitimate, looks pretty good. Get these things that pop up and they're really kind of hard to get rid of. What's one way to make them go away? Go delete the service. You guys know how to do task manager. Go to the task manager.
If they don't block it.
Huh?
If they don't block it.
If they don't, but the ones that, unless you've installed something, they haven't blocked it yet.
Oh, well,
Unless you've installed something.
actually, there's some software, I guess, I don't know how you can classify this, maybe Virginia, but it actually clones itself to look like pure, like
Oh, yeah.
AVG.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Microsoft
That's the one, that's the ransomware. It looks really good like AVG. Free AVG, you know, install this, but it's not.
And then you right-click on the task manager,
And it's gone. I know, yeah, yeah,
And then you
yeah,
go to safe mode, it's actually installed in a
Yep.
hidden folder somewhere.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, there are a lot of those that are very, very painful. That's why you really need to pay attention to these things. And when you're managing, just imagine how big a pain is it on one computer or two computers. Now let's say you've got 300 computers to clean up or 3,000 computers to clean up. How much authority, and that goes back to one of the basic principles, how much authority are you going to give to your users? Why do we have these machines moderately well locked down? Are they locked down as tight as they could be? No. But do you have unlimited access to do things? We hope not. For instance, you probably can't install this stuff, and that to me is one of the things. Again, not being an administrator is I think, one of the biggest steps that you can take to protect yourself. Because if you don't have the authority to install it, you can't install it. In most cases. Yeah. Adware delivers advertising, can be a security risk, monitors and tracks the user's activities. This is the one that James is talking about. Get all these, go someplace and you get all these pop-ups that try to sell you things based on what your surfing activity is as you go through the systems. Keyloggers we've talked about. up front, small hardware device, and again, there's the hardware device, there is a little video. Again, it's a sales pitch, but I think it's kind of interesting to look at what you can do with them, what they advertise, what they're trying to sell these things as for, how big they are, how you would install them, how much information can go on them. Key loggers can be either hardware or software based. And again, in the book, one of the labs has a link to it if you want to put one on your own machine, or if you want to put one on your virtual machine, feel free to download, put those things on. But look at the keystroke logger whenever you do the Sub 7 lab. This shows one. This is for a PS2, and the reason I got the video is that most people aren't using PS2 connectors anymore, and that's what this one shows. Most people are using USB keyboards, USB connectors, and that's what the video is selling, is a USB keystroke logger.
One really fun key logger I saw, which would scan, there's the new thing with everybody wants wireless keyboard and wireless mouse.
Yeah.
Actually will scan through.
Yeah, there are a couple of interesting viruses. There is a keyboard virus for the Macintosh that actually will set itself up as a keystroke logger. So it's not just Microsoft, and this wouldn't be Microsoft, but yeah, wireless, and the fact that wireless sends stuff to anybody that can receive it can be particularly destructive, particularly if it's unencrypted. And encrypting slows things down. When we talk about encryption, encryption is going to make the entire transfer process slower because you've got to do those things. These are captured logs, and you can look at those things. Botnets, zombies, I think Will talked about those. Botnets, hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of computers attacked from remote locations, distributed denial of service attack, a zombie's an infected computer. And there are some indications that, and I read this only in one story, that for this latest one, not everybody's a volunteer in the attacks that are going on. IRC, to remotely control them, attacker is known as a bot herder. Isn't that interesting? That's one of the words. Yeah. It's malware for profit, and again, not a table here. Uses of bots. You can look at that table. Hardware-based attacks. The BIOS, USB devices, network-attached storage, and even cell phones. These things. Network-attached storage. When we talk about storage, you're going to see NAS and SAN. Network-attached storage is kind of like a storage server. Storage area network uses the network itself as the connection point. Storage area network, iSCSI. If you want to play with iSCSI, remind me when I get done to look it up. There is a company that'll give you a free software that you can control up to, I think it's 2 terabytes in a storage area network. For you and me, that's probably more than sufficient. What they're trying to sell is their software to manage more than 4 terabytes or more than 2 terabytes. What this actually does is when we connect to a hard drive on a computer, we plug a cable in. I'm going to get really simplistic. What iSCSI does, when you connect to a computer, you plug in an Ethernet cable. Internet, SCSI. It's a SCSI connection that uses the network to transfer the data. Now, if you think about that, golly, now we're using our Ethernet to send information from the computer to the storage location, all the documents. See any problem with that? Who can see Ethernet? Anybody can get in it. So now we're sending all of our secret documents across the network unencrypted. Any problem with that one? Huh? It may. Depends on how you set it up. Any problem with intercepting that? Besides, we do have an encrypted. Can we crack encryption? If we can get it, we can eventually crack it. I can't. You guys probably can't. Or get smart. You can find somebody that can. So you need to, when you do these things, particularly the storage area networks, think about the way you design your network. They should be on their own private network so that you're not sending that information across them. Other than just loading the network itself, the exposure of the information can be significant. BIOS, coded embedded program, and there are viruses that affect the BIOSes. Older chips, the ROM chips, the read-only memory. Now we got, they say EEPROMs, and I think it's PROM. They say PROM. I think it's EEPROM, electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. The ones that you can use a boot floppy with. Or now you don't have to have a boot floppy. You can actually download them and do the updates through Windows, I think, can't you? BIOS, flash drives, flash memory. Flash devices are really, really, really handy. We use them, I thought, very well this morning. What's the problem with them? This is the one that has the story about the people that just spread them around in the parking lot. People picked them up, took them home, plugged them in, and infected their computers. A lot of that comes back to configuration also. Do you have these configured to do an auto execute? Do you use auto execute on your CDs? When you put a CD in, if it's got an auto run, does it automatically start up, or do you have it configured so that you have to tell it to start up? Again, configuration. Government, U.S. government, has generally made these things off limits. Because not only can you infect machines, you can really carry out an awful lot of information, a lot of secret documents to give to WikiLeaks on flash drives. I don't think we have anything particularly worthy of carrying out on flash drives. But, yeah, you can steal some of them. You're certainly welcome to them. The problem with getting them onto your flash drive is that your flash drive is probably going to be plugged into this computer. I've had people put them into their home directories. Oh, I'm going to get it out of my home directory. Doesn't last very long there. Sophos takes care of it, yeah. That's why they're on a virtual machine. Then they get really tired of my home directory. They still have some stuff in it that pops up on a nightly basis as infected. But they kind of grow immune to that. Now, what's the problem with that kind of growing immune to that? When I really get infected, they're just going to say, oh, I just got some more of that stuff.
They get used to it, and then they stop looking and just...
It's called conditioning. It's called conditioning. Could you do that? That's an accepted warfare technique, and that's kind of what the Iraqis used to do to us. They had this really technique. They would fly down the Gulf, turn left, and shoot. Our problem was occasionally they got step 2 and 3 confused. But conditioning so that something happens, oh yeah, my home directory comes up as infected, oh yeah, it's always infected. Now somebody puts something new on it. It comes up, oh yeah, it's always infected. Well, now we've got a different attack. So you can't really take a lot of anything for granted. SANs and NAS, storage area network, again, storage area network, the storage devices are connected to the network, to a network itself, a storage area network. The network device is connected to the network. That's different from network attached storage, which is storage servers that are individually attached. Let's go back to this one. What this one does, these guys have connections to the storage area network that appear as local hard drives on these devices. I would show you one, except the reason that, and I think there were about 3 of you that were online Thursday, when the storage or the virtual server went crazy and wouldn't do anything because the iSCSI connection that was on the machine at the time corrupted itself, and it had some disks that the virtual server knew about, stored on it, so I just kept trying to get to these things that didn't exist anymore. But they go across the network. This is like your home directories. On our storage server, we have both network attached storage and a storage area network running on it. Your home directories are on the same server that the storage area network stuff's on. The virtual hard drives on it are there. But network address storage on a server someplace. Your home directories is network attached storage. Storage area network is a drive that is someplace else. Cell phones, portable 2-key cell phone, and these are things that can be attacked, are attacked. And there are viruses out for them now too. Actually, it's not really cell phones. It's more of a Bluetooth attack down at the very bottom of the page. Infect cell phone, lure to malicious websites, launch attacks, access account information, abuse the cell phone service. Each of these things happen, and there is one that I've got somewhere. It's not in that one. I have to find it, that people were actually being threatened and their cell phones were being used. It was part of, again, a Bluetooth attack. But, well, it's not that. You can set these things up. Once you infect it with this device, you can listen to all the conversations, including even when the cell phone's off. And the user gets a phone call, your phone rings. Well, you see these things. I mean, these are real, some of the things that you do see in the spy movies where they take the SIM, get all that stuff, and then when the phone rings, their phone rings and they listen to the conversation. Those are real. What these things do is you infect them with a virus and you listen to what's going on, which would be kind of handy if you could listen to all of the staff meetings for your competitors, wouldn't it? So you know what they're going to do? That's another way that you know your network may be infected, is your competitor comes out with your new product in a different color. Yeah. Virtualized systems, they can be attacked, and we won't spend a lot of time here, known as virtualization has become a prime target. Yeah, okay, we know about virtualization. We use virtualization in here on a daily basis. Virtualization, managing and presenting computer resources by function without regard to their physical location on the network. So we use this thing, we're running the operating system, and we can move the virtual machine, and that's a big advantage to the virtual machine. If something happens to the hardware, to the particular hardware, you can migrate it, move the hard drive, whatever else, to some other location. Self-contained, server virtualization, emulation. And take a look at this table: emulation, para-virtualization, full virtualization, and operation system level virtualization, and that's the Linux one. What the Linux one's saying is that it will run a Linux server on it. You couldn't, with the Linux virtualization, you couldn't run a Windows server. With the emulation, which is Microsoft Virtual PC, was kind of what we're using, except it's a larger scale version of it. Virtual machine simulates the complete hardware of the computer and allows unmodified operating system version to be executed. We actually install the software and use the software. We can use Windows, we can use Linux. We can't use Apple because it doesn't, different hardware, it doesn't really virtualize. Para-virtualization, Zen, the Zen desktop, full virtualization, VMware, and this is not the VMware server that runs in Windows. This is the ESX server, the full-blown VMware server that runs on the hardware. If you want to play with something that looks like that one, again, they used to have one called ESXi, which was, I don't know if it still is or not, but you may want to look at VMware. It's a virtual, it's a piece of software that's whole function of life is to manage virtual computers in VMware. TAX virtualization provides the ability to run multiple computers on one physical computer. I think the most that I've had running on ours is somewhere around 80 machines online at the same time. Now, that you could do a pretty good denial of service attack if you attack that one physical machine, couldn't you? We did a pretty good job on Thursday doing our own denial of service attack, didn't we?
Yeah.
For those of you who were on at that point. Yeah, Adam was on, and James was on. Matt was on, huh? Yeah. But you have risks and advantages. And they go into one of the real reasons that, why do we virtualize? Why do we want to do that anyway? Save money? Cooling? What is anybody ever look at what's the processor utilization of your server? Kevin runs servers. What's the processor utilization? Oh, no, don't look at it. Oh, maybe. Well, I think the book says somewhere around 10% maybe. Well, that's a lot of wasted resources. How much of its memory does it use? What we found is that processor utilization is not that big a deal. Memory utilization and disk activity are the things that really get to us mostly in the virtualization. So you can say cooling's a really big deal, because as we become more and more and more powerful with the newer and newer and newer processors, they become hotter and hotter and hotter. So it takes more cooling to carry away that heat. You don't have the degree of heat with the virtualization that you would have with all those physical machines. Protected from the outside world, also need protected from other virtual machines on the same physical computer. And that's something to think about, because you guys are all on the same physical computer. Can you attack each other? You're all on the same network. Can you attack each other? Yeah, kind of. But if we infect that one physical machine, or if we infect one of those virtual machines, can they then, the worm can then be propagated to all the other machines themselves. Hypervisor is the software that runs on the physical machine. It's the software, so you can attack the hypervisor. You can attack the software that manages the virtual machines themselves. And that's just a picture of the virtual machines, and this is a security plug-in, the network IDS, intrusion detection system. When we talk about IDSs and IPSs, intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems, IPS is what you really want. And the way the IDS has been explained is you get the two techies standing around the water cooler, and the one says to the other, hey, did you see that really cool attack we had yesterday? Did a lot of damage. An IPS stops the attack. A detection system detects the attack, tells you about it. The IPS stops the attack. And a lot of what they are is where you put these things. An IDS sits off to the side and watches, and IPS is in line with the traffic flow. Where are we going to put these things? Security software such as a firewall, an intrusion system, a specialized security virtual machine on the physical machine, and you can do a number of those things. So am I making you a little bit paranoid yet? You said yes, maybe, kind of, sort of.
I've been paranoid.
I have too. But the problem is I slip into a sense of security every once in a while. I don't know if you do or not, but it's like, oh yeah, there's not been any problems. Not been any problems for a while. I don't have to worry about this. Well, you still do. You really got to worry about your servers. Individual machines, yes, it's irritating. One computer, it's irritating. Two computers, it's irritating. 300 computers, you got a problem. Server, you got a problem. So what are you going to do with these things? And I think a lot of it is patch management. They talk about that early on, patch management. Do you have the patches? When do they get patched? What's the length of time between when the vulnerability, the exploit is discovered and the patch is made? One of the issues with patch management is once the patch comes out, and if you don't put it on, what the bad guys do is reverse engineer to see what the patch is fixing, and if you're an unpatched machine, now they know how to attack you. So you really do need to stay up to date with these things. Anyhow, questions? Going once, going twice. Ready to take a break and do some labs? Got a little bit of time to do labs, not a lot today. We'll have more time. We'll have more time to do labs on Wednesday.